Hello and welcome back for another episode of the Noobie Dentist Weekly Mentorship Series. In this week's episode, I wanted to talk about CPD and how to plan dental education after you finish dental school. A lot of us, when we finish dental school, we come into the workforce, and for the first time, really, we're losing that structure that we had, throughout high school, throughout undergrad, throughout dental school, that curriculum-based structured learning. When we graduate, we come out, there's a lot of advertisements, there's a lot of courses available. We have our friends doing certain courses. There's courses that we hear about traditionally that have been really popular. And we tend to fall into a pattern of taking a course here and there without a really comprehensive overall long-term plan for the types of courses that we should be doing to further our careers. So I had a couple of advices around CPD and how to plan for that. And I wanted to thank cpdjunkie.com.au for supporting this week's episode. The first advice for planning out your CPD is to have a long-term plan. Gordon Christensen is a world-renowned dentist, and he writes the Clinician's Choice papers every year. And in a podcast that I listened with him a few years ago, and something that stuck with me was that he, around New Year's, around holidays, Christmas time, he plans out and actually writes down his CPD focus for the upcoming year. So someone who has all that experience, who does all that work within dentistry, who's taken almost every course that's available, still takes the time to plan a CPD plan for the upcoming year. So if you're a new grad, if you've been practicing for a couple of years, I think it's important the first thing you should do is lay out a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan in terms of CPD. Now, a lot of people ask, what courses should I take? Should I focus on the basics? Should I pick a stream within dentistry, be it surgical, be it orthodontics or aesthetics, and focus on that? And I think that really comes down to, one is your career goals. What type of dentist do you want to be? Do you want to be a nice general dentist who has a good level of competency in all areas? Or do you want to niche or have a subspecialty as a general dentist and focus on that? Regardless, I think you should look at the type of practice you're in, the types of patients that you're treating, and see what type of work you're doing on a day-to-day basis and how could you improve that. So the first school of thought when it comes to planning your CPD is focusing on the basics, taking a good endodontic course, taking a good composite course, taking the basics of oral surgery course. And as you get those basic skills up to a high level and get some repetitions doing that on a day-to-day basis, then you may realize certain areas of dentistry where you really excel and enjoy. And then for the second and third and beyond, focus on those areas of clinical dentistry that you want to really excel at. The second school of thought is, if you're working as an associate within a practice, if you want to be a little bit more entrepreneurial or business-minded about the approach, would be to see the types of procedures that your principal dentist or other dentists at your practice don't do and focus on those areas. So if your principal dentist or your boss or your other associates really enjoy, for example, doing orthodontic treatment, but there's not much implants or surgery or wisdom teeth extractions being done at the practice, that may be an opportunity for you to focus on those types of procedures so then you can add that value into the practice and get in-house referrals and treat those patients. That could be a really good return on investment for you, because if you learn to do those types of procedures, then there's not much competition for it within the practice and you get work referred to you. And that's a really great way of building a patient base and building your books and building your production. So have a think about that, think about those options, and make sure you have a long-term plan. So write down a yearly goal. This year I want to focus on ortho. This year I want to focus on composites and aesthetics and photography and case presentation. And also don't neglect communication and case presentation skills. It is a really, really important aspect of dentistry that I think a lot of us overlook. The next thing I wanted to really stress upon and talk about is the importance of a structured learning program. One of my mentors told me that a course that's going to be under $1,000 is not worth taking. And I think there's some value to that, because a lot of courses, if you go to a weekend course for a few $100s, you're watching somebody else just present before and after photos, and without getting into the in-depth knowledge or understanding of what is required to fulfill those types of procedures. So taking a structured program, spending a little bit more money for a year-long or modular-based course, one, it gives you some structure in your learning and keeps you accountable along the way. And two, by spending the more money, you're more likely to get value from the people teaching the course, because you can't get great information without paying for it nowadays. And as much as we can see influencers and things on Instagram and YouTube and social media talking about things, but you have to spend some good money and spend some good time in a structured learning program to get that education. I hope that was helpful for this week's mentorship series. I want to thank cpdjunkie.com.au for the support of the podcast this week. And to summarize, 1, make a plan. Make sure you have an idea of what you want to focus on and how you should structure that plan. Is it learning the basics really well and then expanding on areas of interest? Or is it 2, finding within your practice where you're working what your principal dentists or your fellow associates are doing and finding where else you can add value to the practice to build your patients that way? And thirdly, make sure you invest good money in quality CPD and in structured learning programs, because nothing replaces that structure and that continuity of education. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Noobie Dentist Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe and head over to iTunes and give the show a 5-star rating. For all show notes and to access all previous episodes, head over to www.noobiedentist.com. Have a great day.